What's going on, Pre Chiro students? This is Dr. Ben again, and today we have a recent graduate connection to make with Brandon McCormick. Brandon, can you kind of just introduce yourself and let us know where did you graduate from recently, and kind of just talk about where you're at right now, what your mindset is.
Yeah. Well, as you heard, I'm Dr. Brandon McCormick. I recently graduated from Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa. And my main mission actually right now is to be of service, but to figure out who I like to be as a chiropractor. So I'm in a very interesting situation where it's like I'm in this own stepping stone stage. So I'm not working for anyone. I'm my own entity, but it's in a super small space, and I love it. So I'm renting one room, one table, one person, two hands. That's where we're at. I'm really discovering how I like to show up, how much time I like to spend with people, and the ebb and flows of things right now.
I appreciate that vulnerability. It's real when you get out of school. There's so much coming at you
Oh yeah.
that you need to just like silence all that, clear the noise and just
Mhm.
focus on what you have control over. Can you talk about like what you have control over right now as a new graduate? Everyone's dealt different cards. Like, do you have startup capital available to you? Do you have
Mhm.
good credit score? Are you going to access some lines of credit? Like, how are you adapting to this new real world experience of being a new graduate?
Yeah, good question. So no capital, so no money. So when I first graduated, I had enough money to move out to Colorado Springs and pay for 1 month's rent and then get groceries. And so what I ended up doing was like I figured out a way to make that happen. I found a room off of Craigslist and just moved in with like a group of other dudes. And I'm like, I hope they're okay. So it all worked out okay. And then once I got there, I had to adapt and find a different job that's not chiropractic to help, keep me going. And so I didn't even start the business yet. But time happened, started the business. And so what I'm doing is I work a side job along with chiropractic because I was just kind of over the whole loan thing, wasn't having it. And then I talked to some friends and heard so many stories about how getting a loan was quite a challenge. And that was something I didn't want to dive into. And
Mm-hmm.
knowing me and my background, I'm kind of like crafty and I had a lot of backgrounds in just doing different jobs from like bartending to construction. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, there's got to be something. And yeah. And so then currently, right now, what I'm doing is I focus mostly like 2 days a week for chiropractic. And sometimes that changes. I can do fill in work for another doc, or people like to schedule outside my 2 days. And then on the other days, I find out how to do some side hustle. Right now, I'll do like drive sharing and stuff, in which I actually get
Mm-hmm.
a couple of patients from. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no doubt. You gotta adapt, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta find the people, meet the people where they're at, whether it's drive sharing. I mean, you're literally just organically starting this office, right? It's not like you
Yeah. Yeah.
do you have roots in Colorado Springs? What attracted you to that community?
No, I do not have any roots. When I first moved here, no family, no friends really. Maybe like one or two people that I like kind of knew. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what attracted me to Colorado Springs was a gut feeling. People are like, huh? And so I'll explain. Initially, it was around my 10th trimester. And so, like at Palmer Davenport, that's when you're about to graduate. And so I had some downtime, like everything was done. And I was just like in this weird purgatory. Like, what do I do? I can't see people. I can't go. I have to stay. And so I took like some mini road trips. I drove through like Tennessee, I drove through Colorado. And as I was driving through Colorado, I went through Colorado Springs, and then all of a sudden, like, it just hit me. I was like, "What?" My stomach like felt like it was talking to me. It's like, "Live here. This is home." I'm like, "All right." So like, usually I don't get strong feelings or like a strong knowing like that. The only other feeling like that was to be a chiropractor, and so I just listened to it. And then as I listened to it, before I even left Palmer, like all these things started falling in line for me to get out here, which was nuts. It was like the universe is saying, like, we'll help you get out there, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
gonna be easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So that's how.
No doubt. And what are some of those things that the synchronicities that allowed you to really like transition
Yeah.
from where you were living in chiropractic school to this new community. Can you kind of walk us through some of the granular details? You said you found an office on
Yeah.
Craigslist, you found a place
Hmm.
to live on Craigslist, but how
Hmm.
did you actually move your stuff out there? How'd you get out there? And like, what is the budget that you're working with, right? Because it's got to be somewhat limited.
Oh yeah, definitely. So some of the synchronicities that happened, as I figured out that I wanted to be in Colorado Springs from that gut feeling, I was at this event called Lyceum with Delta Sigma Chi at Palmer College of Chiropractic. And so it's this big gathering of active students in this chiropractic fraternity. And then also alumni will come. And there's this cool meeting, and it's like the old and the new coming together and really picking each other's brains. Like, oh, what's new, chiropractic? I'm like, oh, dude, what are you doing? And so I was just like walking through in the backyard, and then I just like locked eyes with this guy. I was like, well, I don't know, what's up, bro? And as I said hello, we had the typical exchange. He's like, where are you at in school? I'm like, oh, I'm 10th trimester, about to graduate. And then all of a sudden his ears perked up. He's like, oh, what are you gonna do? I'm like, well, I plan on open up my own shop. He's like, really, where at? I'm like, well, in Colorado. He's like, interesting. Where in Colorado? And so he said this like something's gonna happen. I'm like, well, Colorado Springs. He's like, my office is in Colorado Springs. I'm like, that's awesome. I'd love to connect. And he's like, well, and I have a room for rent in Colorado Springs. I'm like, no way. And so as that happened, I had a contact in Colorado Springs who was like a brother and like experienced chiropractor and who was awesome in the fraternity. And so that was my hookup to get a space. So that was that.
Mm-hmm.
And then for so that was like the biggest synchronicity. Like I was like biggest one. And then for things to how I got out there. So I graduated, I packed all my stuff up. I went back home to Illinois, and then I just started like almost like going nuts, getting so antsy because I was in contact with the landlord, and like she just wasn't replying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided one day, I'm like, well, I'm going to practice packing my car. And so I like literally packed my whole car up, a Honda Pilot full, just one. That's all the stuff I was carrying. One Honda Pilot full of my stuff, my life. And then I just let it sit for like a day or two. And I like go outside, look at it. Yep. Then all of a sudden she responded to me. So it's like, it was very strange timing there. And then as she did, she's like, yep, we're ready in a couple of days. So I ended up graduated 3 weeks, and then I just drove out to Colorado Springs, and eventually got to the house.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because normally I start these conversations by talking about your background before school because the context of this discussion is pre-chiro. But
Right, right.
my premise is that it's actually pretty easy to get into chiropractic school. It's just very challenging once you get out of chiropractic school. And so
Yeah,
entering into this conversation and being real about like the details of how you're
right,
transitioning and
right.
how you're adapting is very relevant even to a prospective student, just to really see the
Mm-hmm.
realness in like what this looks like. So what's your intention for your practice? Like, what types of trainings did you focus on in school? Like, what were you
Mm-hmm.
particularly passionate about, and what how are you designing the practice that you're stepping into right now?
Yeah, great question. So I'll pick apart that. So the way I'm designing the practice right now is literally like stepping stone. Like as I step, I'm seeing how I want to navigate, how far of a step, how much. And so it's like I said, it's allowing me to figure out who I really enjoy being and how much time I like working with people. Do I want to keep it one room, one table, or do I want like an open space? And so envisioning right now is just allowing me to like evolve and change. And so not stuck in one way and just like, no, this is it, this is it. And so I'm noticing, like I was just reflecting on how I address people, how much it's changed, and the things I've learned just by listening. And so allowing myself to have a little more time with people really contributed for more play with me. And that's something I highly value is uh, play. And so I incorporated that in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, it's like this cool little play shop life laboratory right
Mm-hmm.
now. Right now, so that's how I'm currently designing it. But it's always changing. There's always like little tweaks here and there I'm making, and
Mhm.
which is really cool because like it's the entity itself is evolving and how I do things, and so
Mhm.
that's pretty neat.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's for the envisioning of the practice, and then the other question was like a training aspect that went along for expressing the art, was it?
To express the art and the philosophy, but just also to express yourself. Yeah, there's so much touch points in chiropractic school. If you could just reflect on some of those places, those outlets that you really were able to channel your focus.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I have like a pretty diverse background. Like in school, some of the top hitters for my training was KTC, Kairos Training Culture. They like opened the doors for like so many other avenues for training as well, and they were so upfront about it, which I absolutely loved. And so I became a facilitator for that, and I was just highly passionate because it's done so much, and I wanted to give it back. But at Palmer, there's technique clubs, and so what I did, I was like just kind of like dipping my toe in each club, and I was just so curious. I'm like, why do you do what you do? Why? And just really like get into like why they do the stuff. And as I was like dipping my toes in, I was able to take like, I like this, I like that. This is sweet. I'm gonna take this. And so like I checked out like Activator, SOT, Gonstead, Motion Palpation Club, checked out Network. There wasn't really a club there at Palmer, but there were like these offsite places. I'm like, man, all right, let's do it. But it was so fascinating, so fascinating. And then also going to seminars too. Like I was a seminar junkie, but and so KTC was like a really big one for me. And then also studying under John Martinez was really big and fascinating. And then I spent a lot of time with SOT, and so that was crazy. And then there was this teacher, an actual dude who like taught chiropractic at chiropractic school, which was like kind of nuts. It's like that's kind of surprising to hear for a pre-chiro student, but everyone's so focused on like the hard sciences and like what not to do. And
Mhm.
so when I was about to graduate, where there's like this preceptorship type of deal built into the program, if you want, and I found this doc. His name's Dr. Wallace, and like when I was like reading his like little bio on a piece of paper, it like listed all these different techniques. I was like, holy cow, he's seen a lot. And then all of a sudden it mentioned like biotensegrity. I was like, my eyes glued to that because that was such a big component that I was learning and like just fascinated by learning that from KTC. But learning from Dr. Wallace, he's like this old dude who just seen so much and had a crazy history in chiropractic. I think he's like almost 80 now and he's still doing his thing
Mhm.
at Palmer. But he was able to almost blend like this chiropractic philosophy along with this very functional aspect and like mold them together. And so that was a really big influence on me. And so he taught me concepts of like the spinal engine and keeping like the functionality of the spine and how to like look at the body as a global to local aspect. And so that played a really big role in my art of chiropractic.
Awesome. Awesome.
Mhm.
After being a seminar junkie, can you reflect on some of the formats of the seminars that you attended and which ones you appreciated I mean, I'm sure you
Mhm.
appreciate them for different reasons, but like what is the context that you can build for what it's like to go to a seminar and what are some of the different experiences that students have at seminars? Like how are they designed? How are they set up?
Yeah.
Just kind of reflect on some of those experiences, please.
Mhm. Yeah. So most of the seminars I went to, they had a really physical aspect. So you're always moving. There wasn't too much sitting and listening. They had moments of sitting, but it wasn't all sitting. And I'm an antsy person, and so like the movement like helped me stay really dialed in. And along with that, some of the seminars helped you not just like move aimlessly, but there was a really focused intent on how to move as a chiropractor, like how
Mhm.
to hold your body to not just give forces but receive forces. And like KTC, they were really big on sustainability. And then even working under John, how to hold yourself like in an energetical state and still remaining stable. So the biggest thing that I realized is like there was like movement, and it's not just like another class where you're just like scrolling through your book or an iPad or like looking at a screen the whole time.
Mhm.
So that was the biggest thing that I really enjoyed. But also it was hands on. And the coolest part about it was the seminars I went to, like, you didn't have to be at a certain point in school. Like, you have to be fifth try to come here. You have to already know this to learn this. It's like, well, no, that's the beautiful part about it, as they're very accommodating to like be where you're at. And I actually met a few people in undergrad who like were going to these seminars, and I was be like, at the end of my time in the program, I'm like, good for you. Like, that's just amazing. It's like totally changing the trajectory as a chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
But and then
Mm-hmm.
also too, there's this concept of like chiropractic, yes, teaching the philosophy, but then as you're able to nibble on it too, it's almost like you just don't change how to do things, but you change as a person. Like you start to question and understand the philosophy and start applying it to your life. And I had a crazy personal transformation through this stuff. And so that was pretty bonkers through the seminars, that is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did that fully answer your question, Ben?
It
I
did,
got a little
absolutely,
excited.
most definitely. Yeah, and it's interesting. This conversation is kind of moving backwards in your historical experiences
Mhm.
and scrapbook of stories. So I appreciate you just reflecting. I'm kind of asking you to jog your memory right now. So can we now
Mhm.
get back to the pre-Chiro experience? Like you had just mentioned, you were in seminars with undergrad students and saying how
Mhm.
it would really dramatically sort of shift the learning curve or really
Mhm.
shift the consciousness of incoming chiropractic students if they had been to those seminars before school. Can you talk about like when you decided to become a chiropractor, what that was like, where you were at in life, and also what you did to prepare for chiropractic school?
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. Okay. So we're gonna flash back to me in high school. So I was a lot lankier then. So I was in football. Me being lanky, I had to really get creative with how I approached bigger dudes. And so this one time I didn't approach this bigger dude right. And so we're doing a hitting drill, and I just got laid out. Like I'm just like laying on the ground, like I got up, and then I went to go take another hit because we're doing hitting drills, and it just wasn't fun. Like I took it on this shoulder here, and then as I received the force down that sent this pain shooting down my arm, down my back, I'm like, I'm not doing that again. And so I'm like, coach, I'm broken. What do I do? He's like, go sit. And he's just like, he didn't care. He's got a whole practice to run. And so in high school football, if you don't practice, you don't play. And I couldn't even play if I wanted to. I would have not been of help to the team. And so I'm sitting on the sideline, like I'm injured and I'm totally okay with it until I saw all the second string people going in because our team was just destroying and doing so good. And I was a second string person. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to play anyways. And then all of a sudden I see them all going in. I'm like, I would have played. And so as I sat there, it just wasn't about playing, but like I saw these second string players, like it was their opportunity to shine, to show what they're capable of. And as they were doing it, they were doing it together. And so there's this concept of like brotherhood, teamwork, making memories for like the rest of their life. And like I know I wasn't playing college football. It wasn't gonna happen for me. And I didn't really want to. Like it was just high school. That's what I wanted to do. And I was like, I was literally missing out on life. The memories, the brotherhood, the teamwork, and those are something I just crave and want. And I'm just stuck, feeling like in my mind, like I could do those things. My body's like, you can't do those things. I was like, there's this broken relationship between my mind and my body. Man, this sucks. So next week, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be better. I was not better. Same thing. Nothing changed. It hurt so bad to receive pressure on the shoulder. And then can't practice, you can't play. And the same thing happened the second game. Second string players are going in, and I felt so alone, isolated. Like I wasn't even part of the team anymore. I was just like this like little crutch that was like, yay, go team. It was like a little cheerleader for him. And so then after that, I discussed with him. I'm like, Mom, all right, what do we do? I have no idea where I'm going with this. Like, I need to somehow get better. So we tried a couple stuff, didn't happen. Like some over the counter pain drugs, some creams, nothing. And then after a few days, my mom's like, hey, let's go to the neighbor. I was like, okay, sure. Let's see what the neighbor dude has. I have no idea who the neighbor is. Turns out he was a chiropractor. I walk in, it's like this really big house. He has this like funky table. He's like, yeah, man, what's up? Come sit. I was like, all right. He's like, yep, we're gonna do this thing. I'm like, bring it on. Then he's like, crunch. I was like, holy cow. And then he like pulled my ear and there was like an ear adjustment my first time. I was like, what? So I was just blown away. Next day, I felt better and I was able to play football and it was amazing. I totally forgot about chiropractic. It was like, cool, I'm better. I don't care. And then some time passed and I was in an anatomy class and my teacher, I don't know why she asked this, but she's like, hey, Brandon, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I'm just like this kid who's pretty easygoing and who doesn't have much of a like an opinion about stuff. I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't care. Yeah, cool, I'm down. Let's do it. But then all of a sudden, like, there was a few moments of when she asked Brandon, "What do you want to do with the rest of your life?" And I was just like, "Chiropractor." And so, like, I was so confused on why I said it. Like, something spoke for me. It was like, "You want to be a chiropractor?" But I interrupted, and I was like, "Am I sure?" So I was like, "Chiropractor." And I was like, "Yeah, chiropractor." She's like, "Oh, cool." And I'm like, and I'm just thinking in my head, like, what? Where did this come from? And so, like, ever since that day, I was just like, that's where I'm going. And then I had no idea like what I had to do to be a chiropractor. So it turns out you have to go to more school. I was like, all right, I could do that. College, sure. And as like I didn't even like look into like what I had to do really to be a chiropractor, like except talk to a guidance counselor. And like I was hanging out with a bunch of like med students when I went to college, and they were so focused and so like I need the A's or I'm not gonna get in. And so like I picked up that mentality, not knowing how difficult or not difficult it is to get in chiropractic school. And so I was pretty like dialed in. I became like a super nerd. Like in high school, I got like C's and B's. And then like in college, like I was getting a ton of A's and I was just super dived in, but I loved it because I had a purpose of like, if I'm going to be a good chiropractor, this is what I have to do. And then like I didn't even like shadow chiropractic. I had no idea about the philosophy. And I was just like clueless, but so focused. It was super interesting. But then as I went that route is a gift now, but there was this class where I was told that like there is no God. There's no evidence. I was like, sweet, yeah, I totally believe you, man. As a teacher I looked up to and then all this evidence supported. And then as I went through college, I had this mindset of like evidence and purely like hard science. And then as I got into Cairo school, I picked up that same mentality of you have to get good grades to be a good chiropractor. And then I was like, my paradigm literally shattered because one, that wasn't the case for me. It's not good grades to be a good chiropractor. It's about working these and it's who you are as a person. You know, that plays such a big role. And then through the philosophy, it opened up like this door for a whole spiritual side, which also changed my life. And yeah, that's the pre-Cairo story in a nutshell too, getting into Cairo school.
So having gone through a period of life of just being focused on the academics, and then
Mm-hmm.
getting into chiropractic school, still focused on the academics, but then just having a shift in focus of what it takes to be a good chiropractor, being really kind of shown to you, maybe you could say later on in the path once you're already in school. What were some of the challenges or difficulties that kind of got in your way of just
Mm-hmm.
diving right into what you were hearing it takes to become a good chiropractor? You said the spiritual side, you said
Mm-hmm.
work in the hands. Like, what did you struggle with? Because it sounds like the academics is not your struggle.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, it was comfortable almost. It was challenging, don't get me wrong. Like they throw so much at you. It's like, wow. But the struggle for me was diving into the hands-on because like in school you have this like hierarchy of like, oh, the senior, junior, sophomore, and like freshman idea still like coming out of it. And so for me, like I know nothing and I just show up at this club, like do they expect me to already know stuff? Like I've never done this. And so feeling new and stepping into something that you have no idea about, like stepping into the unknown with these like technique courses and your skill level, knowing that it's not developed, that was a feeling inside of me that I had that was difficult to navigate. But I had like a background of like stepping into that a lot with like tumbling and doing like skills you never done before and hopefully you don't die. And so I like listened to it. I'm like, this is uncomfortable. And then I like went to the club anyways, because like I was curious and I was like, yo, if I'm not going to learn this to like middle to like end of the program stuff, why not start now and start developing the skills? And so that was a challenge. And then balancing academics and chiropractic was another big challenge because I could do academics, but it takes time and scheduling that out. So there was this phrase that was given to me by one of my mentors is don't let school get in the way of chiropractic. Right. And so it's just like, at first I was like insulted. I was like, what do you mean? I'm in chiropractic school. How do you? And then realizing that there's so much more to chiropractic. And so, which is the biggest thing is just getting hands on, whether you're going to try addressing a system or just listening to a system. It's so valuable in not just one system, but feeling the beauty and the variances of systems and how they integrate life and such. And so that was one of the biggest things to navigate was getting over my fear of stepping into the unknown of like not knowing how to do stuff and balancing academics and chiropractic. Those were the two biggies.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point that we look at the anatomy and we look at the design of the spine, and it's completely different depending on the culture that the person comes from, their diet. Also,
Yeah.
just every person at every stage of life has a different
Mhm.
functionality in their spine, and it's not just a one size fits all in regards to how you adjust people. So, really
Mhm.
tapping into the artistry that is required if you're going to meet people where they're at with the types of spines that they have. It's very interesting to think about the cultural spine and
Yeah.
have you been on any trips out of the country and worked on people from other cultures? Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I have. I went on a mission trip with Dr. Suki Ruker, and it was in Mexico. It was in Mexico, which was awesome. And I can go into details about that, but yeah.
Go for it. What was the experience like?
Yeah, and so it was super interesting for me. One, feeling different bodies, and this was people's like first time with chiropractic ever, and we don't speak the language, and they laid on my table and they trusted me, and maybe just because they didn't know, I don't know, but I'm like, we're gonna have a time. But what was interesting for me is like one, palpating these totally different systems. There's just like a density that I never felt before. I was like, holy cow, this is cool. But my table was breaking. Like I don't know what the deal was. It was like one of those portable tables, and it folded in the middle, and it started like hyper extending. And I was like, oh man, this table isn't going to hold this weight. And so I started learning tonal. And so this was like another gift of my table couldn't receive high forces, so I had to practice with low forces. And so most of the service trip, I actually started doing tonal stuff, but I really gave it time, and I started seeing people's body shift. And so, like, say, like a whole pelvis was over here, and it started just coming back, and it was just like a little doink. I'm like, dang it, this is nuts. And so it's such a great experience for me to able to blend this tonal and osseous, but allowed me to develop this tonal side to blend the osseous just because my table was going to break. And then at part of the trip, it ended up breaking as a dude was getting off. And then I folded up the table, and so it was on the ground, but I was still able to like work. And I was practicing like some mobility routine at the time, oddly enough. And so I was like getting these crazy deep squats, like working on people and stuff. But yeah, I stuck with the whole tonal thing too. So it like so much was learned in that experience. So that was highly
Mm, mm.
valued.
No, it's a very interesting sort of reflection on your path, you know, because here you are. And how long ago did you graduate?
I graduated. Let me not get the year on here in October of 2019.
Okay, so it's been a little while now, and
Yeah, a little over a year. A little over a year.
okay,
Yeah.
and now that you've been in the real world in practice,
Mhm.
is there anything you would have liked to have spent more time on as a student, or would have liked to have gained exposure earlier in your path so that you could be more prepared for some of the challenges that you're facing right now?
Yes, and. So I'm very happy with my choice on to get involved with the amount of like seminars and techniques that I have. But I could have done that sooner, and so I didn't hop in and really get all in until like fourth or third-ish trimester-ish. And so that could have happened sooner. But then also learning the like standard businesses and shadowing more offices to see the potential of what it could look like. Those would be the two things
Mhm.
I'd want.
Knowing what you know now, what would you be asking at the offices that you would have shadowed with the understanding that you have now? What are some of the deeper questions you would have had going into those offices? What are some of the things you would have been trying to observe and maybe
Yeah,
even asking that the office demonstrate to you?
right. The biggest thing now I would want to like see would be systems, and so that's a super general word. But how much time they spend with the patient, what's it look like for a new patient to get in when they walk in the door, through their whole first visit, second visit, to adjust on the first day, to adjust on the second day. How do you get new patients? That was a big one. I'm like, what? Like, hey, do you want to come get it? You're leaving. Okay. And so like what avenues are you doing? Like social media? Are you doing Google? How do you get high on Google ranks? That's important. Everyone uses Google. What happens if you get restricted on Facebook and Instagram for a year and it's still going? Oh, that's me. And how do you hire office staff? What do you look for? And how do you get a loan? Those would be some like stuff I'd ask and be interested in, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, it's great. I appreciate you just kind of, off the cuff, just throwing some reflection or back at me. I'm just
Yeah.
asking you just to really pick apart what's going on in your mind. It sounds like you took a really great path and that you're happy. Would you say, like, to a high school or a college student, become a chiropractor? And if so, like, what would you say to them if they were like, I don't really know what I want to do. I think I want to go and help people someday. I want to maybe get
Mhm.
into healthcare. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a chiropractor. How would you kind of just break it down to them, the path you took?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's a super fun question. I'm getting all amped up. And so when I get amped up, I get a little scattery. So I'm going to bring it back. And so I'd first ask them, like, if I didn't really know if they wanted to be a chiropractor, but they wanted to help people, I would definitely throw that as an option. I'm like, well, what do you think about like this? And like, do you like touching people and being of service and stuff? But like, oh man, there's so many avenues you can go with this. But one thing I'd really want to discuss with that person is the concept of health, which like no one discussed that with me. And like I didn't learn that. Like I'm still learning. Like is still understanding of like where does health come from? Like what about these pills that are always given, or what about like these like creams and stuff, or like all these concepts. And so I'd almost ask them like, what's your definition of health, or like how do you see health? And then as that conversation would happen, I'd still want to adjust them and be like, yo, check this out. But the biggest thing I'd want to share though is like you called it out, like oh, you look happy. Without a doubt, like when I get to do chiropractic days or be a chiropractor, it's not it's not work, it's playtime, and like with the utmost seriousness. And so it's like you get to be of service. And when I step into that role, it's like I step into my power zone. It's like I forget about everything else. Like everything in here is just like it's all on board. We're like in this harmonic state of just ready to give the goods, ready to dish up some hope. And I'd want to really express that and see if they could find another job that can give that, or another career, or another way of living.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're struggling, like come back to chiropractic and I'll show you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and absolutely, the experience is primary, right? I think that
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to a student who's about to go to chiropractic school in the next couple months just a few days ago, and he hasn't really been to a chiropractor since that person that exposed him to it maybe 5 years ago. But he's
Yeah.
about to enter chiropractic school and doesn't really see the importance that going to a chiropractor and getting some regular care, and maybe even going to multiple chiropractors and getting series of adjustments and really engaging in their care
Mhm.
is so valuable, just to understand like through experience what it's like, right?
Oh, without a doubt, man. That's such a big deal. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Right on. I thought that you were earlier on of getting out of school, so I was going to ask you if you had any questions for me. But what are some questions that you're kind of sitting with these days, or that you're working on, that maybe I can kind of give some reflections on? I'm like 8, 9 years out.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
I started school with John. Me and John were in orientation together,
Oh, very cool.
and yeah, I was there when Brett took his tour, of chiropractic school. I was like, I met him right there on day one, where he was
Oh,
about
very
to go
cool.
in the therapeutic chiropractic direction, and I was like, no, no,
That's
get exposure to
yeah.
both sides and then make an informed
Yeah.
decision. And that's really the
Mhm.
premise of this podcast and this whole project that I'm engaged in, is just giving people the opportunity to have an informed decision on like what are their
Mhm.
options, because a lot of people just get exposed to the therapeutic side of chiropractic,
Mhm.
and people are like, what do you mean by therapeutic, non-therapeutic? I'm like, well, it's not an event, it's a process. If somebody comes in, yeah, maybe they have back pain, but once that ends, like, I'm not saying, okay, you're discharged, don't ever come back unless you have pain again. It's like,
Right. Right.
okay, great, I'm still
Mhm.
here. Let's keep moving forward. You're still here
Right.
living. Let's help you age better. Let's help you, get to where you're trying to go in life. Let's
Yeah.
so many different things, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
what's the current questions that you're sitting with right now?
Yeah. So it's an art side. It's an art side of things. And so it's like upon a reflection, like it's so crazy to like see like I'm like growing like I'm a chiropractic baby right now. And so like I haven't realized that there's this like chiropractic growth process, and it's bonkers to me. Very cool. And what I'm curious is like your evolution of care as you spent through your was it 8, 9 years in practice? Like what did that look like for you? How'd that change?
Mhm. I mean, the thing that gets me the most juiced when you ask that question is because it's one of my biggest passions, that question.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really is like, okay, we've been given so much exposure to all these different techniques in chiropractic school and even through
Yeah.
seminars once we get out of school. And it's like, how do we make it our own? So I started calling it my cab. You talked about being in ride share, my
Mm-hmm.
chiropractic adjusting blend. And everybody has their unique blend. And the way that you get clear on your blend is that you are continuously, it doesn't have to be every day, it doesn't have to be every week or even every month, but you're continuously coming back and asking yourself that question, is like, what is my current flow? How am I approaching the body? What questions am I asking? What are my parameters? How do I know whether I've cleared a subluxation? How do I know whether somebody has really reached where I'm trying to take them, or am I just open to the possibilities and I don't have a clear intention? Like, how does that change over time, and like what types of people bring out certain things in me? I think that's a really juicy way to practice, is a continuous reflection. Maybe it's through
Mm-hmm.
writing, maybe it's through creating a video of like how you work with people, what you look for. And I used to, in Tai Chi and different practices where breath is involved, I would be like, can I do an adjustment in 20 breaths? Or what's the 30 breath adjustment? Or what's the 20 touch adjustment, or the 30
Oh,
touch
dude.
adjustment? And just playing around with different sort of algorithms that, if
Mhm.
somebody comes in this way, what's the most effective way to get to the heart of where they're at? And how do I bring it out of them and help them see themselves in that moment? And you know the misalignment can be a metaphor for their job dissatisfaction, or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
relationship dissatisfaction, or just not achieving what they have set out to achieve. So it, to me, the art is so vast, so deep.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's why I love being a chiropractor, because it is very nonlinear, and I'm a very nonlinear person. So that's why I love your question, because it's a very nonlinear question. You can go
Mhm.
so many directions with it, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's fun to hear. I really enjoyed that. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As a student, I would always tell people, I would say, especially in your early years or even early in practice, like really reflect on paper every single detail of like, I walk up, I touch right behind the medial malleolus, I listen for the pulse, I check the heel tension, I might do flexion extension first and then lateral bending. I bring the
Mhm.
feet towards the pelvis. I'm checking to see whether one foot goes farther towards the pelvis or the other. I'm bringing the feet back down. I go up. I place one hand under the occiput, one hand behind the knee. I
Mhm.
do an axial distraction move. Then I approach the body and I'm just listening and I run my hands 3 times over the spine and I'm being called to the upper thoracic. And so then, I ask them to breathe there and then I ask them to turn their head this way or I move their arm this way, and then
Mhm.
I tap them on one side. The more detailed you can get, the
Yeah.
more crystallized in your mind your adjusting becomes, right? So it's a
Yeah.
great
Mhm.
practice to keep crystallizing exactly how you're practicing so that you can see, where's the refinement in this and look back and start to chart your progress.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's just, yeah, that's an amazing tip for not just like Kairos students, but like me too, just to reflect. And as you do that, notice the changes or notice what comes up or, yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, it should be like almost part of the program or, it's
Yeah.
part of that parallel program that we talk about. If
Yeah.
you went to an SOT seminar, what are some of the things that you can reflect on that have actually become a part
Mhm.
of your approach of how you see the body? Because, SOT is very detail oriented
Oh,
and
yeah.
very like,
Yes.
if this,
Mhm.
then that, very cause and effect.
Mhm.
Yeah, what are some seminars or some specific interests that you have currently that you're thinking that you might investigate further?
Yeah. And so to touch on the question, what I learned from like SOT, the coolest part about it was like learning these like weird facts in a protocol that I don't remember the whole protocol, but then seeing them show up in other techniques because so many techniques almost are based off of SOT. But learning the intimate relationship between the sacrum and the occiput and realizing the interconnectedness is like one of those techniques is like, yeah, you push here, but then this means go here. And so like there's this thing called trap fibers where you figure out this like tension and this pain point, and then it will lead you to a certain spot in the spine. I was just like, what? And so there's a bunch of like this crazy woo-woo stuff going on that I loved and I didn't understand. So I just kept picking at it. And they're like, and then there's this concept of like cranial work. And then there's aspects how you can address the spine without osseously adjusting it, but it's like a neurological input. And I was just like, what? Like there's this thing you could like push on the sacrum and then you look at the skin and see if it has blanching anywhere. And where there's blanching, that's where you do this crazy like neurological knife input, knife being like the contact with the side of your hand. And to address that and like really focusing on this like liquid flow that bathes the spinal cord and like attending and being of service to that. I was just like, holy cow. But then it addressed so much. Yeah. So that's just like a couple of things I learned. It's so big and amazing. And
Mhm.
yeah, I forgot your second question.
No, it's just like where is your particular interest at
Uh,
in regards to how how you personally are growing and developing your skills or your focus. Like some people are bouncing to different things once they get into practice and they're in the
yeah.
real world. So I'm just wondering,
Uh-huh.
have you stayed focused on the arts? And if so, like which arts are you currently studying or are
Yeah.
you more focused on other things right now? Where's your focus at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's still a heavy focus on the art for me. I just love it. I love it. And so like a big idea of mine, like the practice is called the evolution chiropractic. And so not just for people to like evolve through their own journey, but for me to evolve as a chiropractor. So that's as a person, but also my technique. And so a thing I'm working on is almost like finding areas, but listening to how it wants to be addressed and being okay with not knowing how to and like stepping into that play position. But right now, being called to like more tonally styles, but still obviously adjusting. And so it's the blend from that mission trip is what really fascinates me. I'm like listening to the depth and the tone, but yet seeing what kind of force it wants, whether it's like it's a spectrum from really light to big in my mind. It's like it's not like tonal or osseous, it's both, but where's the force gonna lie on that spectrum? Just like therapeutic or like vitalistic, like where are you gonna fall on that spectrum? Where do you want to go? It's your option. Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
I appreciate you being so transparent with these prospective students. I think this is relevant and valuable for a current chiropractic student or even a new graduate, but especially somebody who can enter into chiropractic school with the level of clarity that is needed to really overcome some of these bigger obstacles that
Mhm.
usually happen internally once you get into school, whether it's
Yeah.
academic or whether it's in the seminar with your hands shaking on the person's neck when
Mhm.
you're first starting to touch people,
Yeah,
or if
yeah.
you're really rough and kind of tense in your
Mhm.
hands. Just that process could be very frustrating, and it could be very disheartening to know that you're spending all this money and you're kind of suck in some ways, and you beat
Mhm.
yourself up. We're our own
Oh,
biggest
yeah.
critics a lot of the times, and self-defeating talk. So the more we can build people up, that's really what I'm hoping for. Is some
Mhm.
of the inspiration that you shared today, some of the inspiration that I shared today really translates to people getting into school and being having their cup so full that it's like running over, that I
Mhm.
fail a class or I fail the boards, or something happens to a friend or a family member outside of school. Like I'm able internally to process that and get stronger but not get weaker, if that's
Yeah,
possible even, but that's my hope at least.
yeah, it's a beautiful hope. I'm with you, man. I think this is so valuable what you're doing, giving them an option to discover this stuff because I had no idea what I was getting into, and I followed the path, and here I am. But like, I wish I could have watched this, like what we're doing right now. It's amazing. So thank you for your efforts, and
Thank you.
that it's changing. It's changing the whole profession. It's has this crazy potential. It's nuts.
It does have a crazy nutty potential, right? It's like
Mhm.
adjusting the profession. The primary subluxation in the
Yeah,
profession is this disconnection with the
yeah.
incoming students, the current students, and the new graduates, and even the people in practice, and being a chiropractor, like having chiropractors support the process of being a chiropractor
Mhm.
versus being a DC. I've been really drawing that distinction, and I think it traces back to BJ Palmer, DD Palmer. We're talking about, you can be the person that tries to fly with the flock, or you could blaze your own trail. And being a chiropractor is really like finding your own internal truth, but also like standing on the shoulders of the giants that came before you and
Mhm.
recognizing these amazing examples of people who are chiropractors who embody what it means to be a chiropractor. And so everybody that I have on this podcast, I try and make sure that they're a chiropractor and not
Mhm.
just a DC. And
Right.
I hate to just side with one, but I would love to see more chiropractors in the world that are actually chiropractors and not.
Yeah.
I don't really want to send a bunch of people to chiropractic school to then just become therapeutically oriented
Right. Right.
chiropractors, or doctors of chiropractic. So
Right. Yeah. It's like we already have those, the therapeutic. That's in so many different professions. The chiropractors, as you say, that's what makes us special, us unique, you know? And I would agree. We need more of that.
hmm right on, brother. If we end here, it's totally fine. But is there anything, like, if this interview just ended like off camera, like, what's going on?
Mhm.
Is there anything we can kind of shift the tone and just like have a different type of conversation about, just in regards to life, in regards to life balancing, in
Mhm.
regards to strategizing? Is there anything that's like kind of just interesting to touch on
Yeah.
or go deeper into?
Yeah. I've it right. Yeah. It came up right away. Right away. So, me having my own business, like it's me. I am the business. And so I'm really working on this relationship of figuring out almost how to not be my business. So like say there's weeks when like I don't have like a new patient or I feel like the business is not doing good based on like whatever outcome I use. It starts to like wreck me on the inside. I'm like, business is not doing good. I'm not doing good. And so I'm having trouble navigating that relationship. Like I'm aware of it, which is awesome. That's like the first step for me. But I'm almost a little stuck. Like it creates a lot of panic in me. I'm like, there's some downtime. What do I do? Like, that's
Yeah.
what I'm working
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, no doubt. The mindset that I'm in right now is that when that's happening and it happens consistently,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
not all the time, but it happens
mhm,
even if you're at your, at your peak of whatever performance level or you're trying to achieve, even if you've
mhm,
achieved whatever your previous goals were, you're still going to
right,
have those moments of doubt, fear,
mhm,
uncertainty. And that's where it's like life without fear, trusting in the process is, it's maybe a little cliche, but from a more practical, pragmatic standpoint,
right,
it's really um, leaning further into like, how am I not fully investing in myself? How am I not fully investing in my practice? Is it
mhm,
that I'm not putting any money towards marketing? Is it that I
mhm,
have like a scarcity mindset in regards to how much money I'm willing to put into my overhead,
yeah,
and recognizing that everything's temporary, and that even if, you know, these signals that you're receiving, right? We're antennas, we receive this information, we
mhm,
processing it. I believe that when that stuff happens, I really just need to play a little bit harder in regards to like what I'm willing to put in regards to maybe
right,
potentially financial investment, or potentially hiring somebody
mhm,
to help me, because we as chiropractors try and do way too much. We try and do everything. And I'm
yeah, I'm
guilty of
noticing.
that. I still
Yeah,
to this
yeah,
day talk all the time about how to delegate and to be more efficient and to just know what I'm best at and just focus on
mhm,
that. And it could be difficult because we're being marketed to all the time and being told, hey, buy my service, buy my program, with all
yeah,
these huge guarantees that are not really guarantees. They're just marketed as guarantees.
mhm,
But so yeah, so that being said, I would just say like, if it's the new patient thing, like focus on what you can control. Like there's things
mhm,
like Income School on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. Income School teaches you how to write blogs that gain you traffic and really start to position your website higher in Google. They teach you how to like really show up on the top of Google organically.
mhm,
And as chiropractors, we really like growing organically. So
mhm,
that's starting from the inside out. It's like always like, what can we do inside the practice? So it
right,
might mean like writing blogs, it might mean creating videos, it might mean asking questions of the people that you are seeing that helps lead their mind towards like, hey, this person's trying to see more people, like I play a role in this, let me support the tribe growing. Um, it's really just keep turning back to like, what can I control? How can I grow
mhm,
from within? And you could hire an outside company to do some sort of marketing ad spend, but usually that turns into them telling you you need to have like a Groupon offer with a pain-based message that doesn't really resonate with the type of person you are and the type of
mhm,
chiropractic you're providing. At the same time, it works. People come in for that reason, and then you shift their consciousness, and it
right,
happens whether they've come in through a Groupon or not, but it just feels a little less integrity to have it
right,
come for like such a discounted rate. But the reality is the joint exists and they're probably in
mhm,
Colorado Springs and they
yeah,
probably are so cheap that it's comparable to the Groupon. So you're kind of just like bringing it down to a level of access that doesn't currently exist. How much are your like new patient offers? Like what's the, do you
yeah,
have a
yeah,
deal? What's that
yeah,
about?
yeah, yep, yep. So I have like a company doing some like Google stuff. But right now, usually normal price is like 169 for new patient exam, and then it's like they get $100 off, so it's like 69. And so like I was really debating with the price, like, oh, go lower, include a free adjustment. I'm like, no, I do a lot of work for my initial exam too. Like it's a 2-day process with a bunch of cool stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, that's what I do for that. And then
Yeah,
I'm
and
like
I go
in
back and
between
forth,
too.
not to interrupt you, but I go back and forth
Mhm,
on that. Like, I also don't adjust on the first visit. I have friends that adjust on the third visit, and then I
mhm,
also have chiropractors that adjust on the first and the second visit, and
yeah.
then have somebody really decide. So they know you're delivering the goods, because the art speaks for itself. It speaks volumes, and it really kind of shifts people towards you, not away from you.
Right.
That being said, you need like, yeah, you need to get a commitment at some point, right? So,
Mm.
um, but I hear you. Anyway, keep going. I just wanted to interject there and say that,
Yeah, no,
my
thank you.
mind goes back and forth in many different directions with like,
Hmm.
sometimes I can read a person and just have that flexibility that's like, okay, they're getting adjusted right now. They need to understand through experience
Hmm.
what this is about.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have other people where it's like, okay, they just need to have the context built more and make an informed decision that like this is something they really want to engage with, because it is a commitment we're asking for. I don't know, how long is your initial care plans that you're offering?
Yeah, so I did like these mini section care plans. So you can either get adjusted, just like one adjustment, or you could buy like a 6 package or like a 12 package visit thing.
Right. And then you see companies saying that you should do 3 times a week for 12 weeks, right? That's like a dominant narrative of like 36 visit care plans, and then
Yeah.
also 6 month care plans, which are like 72 visits. And then
Mhm.
also 1 year long care plans. Like there's docs that only offer 6 months and only offer a year. So you really have to ask yourself, like, if I was coming into this office, would I be down to sign up for 6 months or a year?
Right.
Maybe not, but there are some
Mhm.
people that are really looking for that
Mhm.
opportunity. And I just believe that having the visits be in packs like that doesn't build enough context as to the time. It doesn't build like a time context. So maybe you have that right next to like, okay, 6 visits is designed to be in a month, whereas 12
Mhm.
visits is designed to be in 3 months. I don't really know. I'm just saying, like, as an
Mhm.
example, I would definitely make sure that the page that you're giving them, where they're looking at the prices, gives as much context as to why you're making that offer. So like mine
Mhm.
is like, either a 12, 25, or 36. And it's like, this is how much time you're really investing or committing to. This is the
Right.
intention. I said, I give everybody the flexibility, which is a weak link in my selling, is like, I'm like,
Mhm.
hey, this is flexible. Life is non-linear, but this is the intention. And if you were my brother, sister, mother, father, this is the recommendation I would be giving to them if money was not in the equation, if time was not in the equation. And,
Mhm.
I kind of keep it real with them, like, hey, I
Yeah.
really think you need this. What do you want to do? These are the other options.
Right. Right. Yeah. With the time aspect, the way I set up like the report of findings is like, yeah, I give them like, this is the best plan I give you, and I'm like, let them know like it's going to be over 6 months and here's why. And then as I show them the payment options, I'm like, here's how we can get there, and then you can go per visit or
So is it 6 and 12 only, or do you have per 6, 12, and then even more?
yeah. So it's just per 6 and 12.
Okay.
That's
And
it.
so how often do you have to circle back with them to get a recommitment or a reaffirmation that this is the path that they want to stay on to get to 6 months?
Mm-hmm. Um, I don't know if I'm completely understanding, but every time that 12 hits, I'll do like a re-exam, like here's where we're at, and then usually either before then or then, based on the function I'm seeing, we'll change the frequency, and I'll
Right.
show them what I see and show them what they're feeling. And
Okay.
so usually it's like they're on board. If the people buy the 12 first, they're like, yeah, let's keep it going. I'm getting the results and I dig it.
Okay. Awesome. So is it
Mhm.
more of just like a volume and frequency of new people coming in, or is it more like you're not available for enough people and you just don't have enough time in your schedule to see as many
Mhm.
people as you want to see? What's the challenge right now that you're
Yeah.
needing to shift?
Yeah, the biggest challenge would having the new people come in, because I can make all the time for them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just
How long is a new visit? A new person visit?
yeah, I'm learning it's dependent on how they fill out paperwork, and so I'm like navigating like how short can I make this.
Okay.
Um, it's usually about an hour for that first visit with doing all the functional stuff.
That's cool. And then the second visit's how long?
Hmm. That's more like 30 minutes, second visit.
Okay. So you're spending about an hour and a half with somebody, and
Mm-hmm.
then the commitment needs to be made on the second visit or the third visit in regards to buying the plan.
Mm-hmm. Second visit.
Okay. And they're getting adjusted on the end of the second visit, or
Yes.
yes. Okay. Got you. Got you. Okay, cool. So it's very similar to mine. Yeah. I think that it's, if I was to go back to being a year in, because I know how much I did screenings and I know how unavailable
Mm-hmm.
screenings are right now.
Yeah.
We would
Yeah.
be out in our community selling vouchers every single weekend, me and my partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to me right now, like doing webinars, inviting people to invite people,
Mm-hmm.
that's potentially like the screening of 2021 for me is like doing webinars, doing like health talks or life talks online, and trying to potentially put a little bit of an ad spend behind the invitation to come to the talk. To me, that's
Yeah.
less cheesy than like buy this coupon here, but it's more like, hey, come here and have a conversation with a potential chiropractor that can help you change your life or something like that. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
spitballing and being creative with you. This is like the type of stuff that we've been talking about that I need to start doing, is like just offering a
Mm-hmm.
weekly or every other week talk. If you
Yeah.
talk to people like Arno, he would say that it was like a prerequisite, or not a prerequisite, but it was like an essential practice. If you were to have a cafe of life, that you would have to be giving health talks every single
Mm-hmm.
week. Like that was just embedded. And nowadays there are these virtual talks, but you can reach more people potentially. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, once again, it kind of starts from within, right? It starts from
Yeah.
like, what
Yeah.
do you have control over? But anyway, this has been a long conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for pouring into me. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, most definitely. And thank you for pouring into whoever that audience is that's lucky enough to hear this and digest this and really actually apply some of these insights that you provided, because there was just so much that
Mm-hmm.
you went into of like the real details of being a chiropractic student. And um, it's pretty cool. Like you said, you just graduated Palmer. So I know that you were in school at the same time as a lot of the other people I've had on this podcast. I don't know if you're aware
Mm-hmm.
of it or not, but have you checked out this podcast yet? Have you looked at some of
Yeah,
the
I
people I've,
looked at
I've connected with?
yeah, one episode before, but not too much more than that. Not too much more than that.
Which episode did you check out?
The one when I interviewed Hannah Stays.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's a student. She's a student.
Yeah, she was there with you, right?
Yeah, she was in school when I was in school.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Awesome.